A very warm welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining us today. Let me take this opportunity of first setting the context, and then I'll introduce you to Will, with whom I've had a chat before, and I can tell you, very, very impressive of what he's doing. This is all focused around climate. As we all know, climate disasters are increasing both in frequency and intensity, leaving communities without power, communication, and essential services when they need them the most. Traditional disaster responses is still heavily dependent on diesel generators in most parts of the world and complex fuel supply chains that are costly, polluting, and often unreliable during crisis. As climate pressures rise, frontline responders urgently need cleaner, faster, and more resilient energy solutions that protect both people as well as the planet. We are honored to have with us Will Heegaard, founder and CEO of Footprint Project, a pioneering organization that is transforming disaster response through renewable energy. By deploying solar microgrids, power stations, and circular energy logistics, Footprint Projects has powered hospitals, shelters, community centers, and relief operations in some of the most challenging environments all across the world. Will's work demonstrates how clean energy is not just an environmental choice, but a humanitarian imperative. So in today's session, which we are calling From Crisis to Sustainability, Building Greener Disaster Recovery Systems, the goal is to explore how renewable technologies, cross-sector partnerships, and innovative logistics can accelerate rapid response, strengthen community resilience, and redefine the future of disaster recovery. So with that set up, let me first ask a basic question to Will and get his understanding and in response to, what originally inspired you to start the Footprint Project, and when did you realize that these are real gaps, traditional disaster responses and clean energy solutions were required?
Yeah, thank you. It's a real privilege to be here today. My name is Will Heegaard. I work as the founder and founding director of Footprint Project. And what started this, I'll tell the intro, the kind of background story, how we got into this, and then if it's okay, I'll share a couple slides to just give a kind of images of what we're actually talking about when we think about mobile solar microgrids or other sustainable response technologies in disaster zones and how that looks for first responders and frontline communities. But this kind of arc or this story really started after I had been working during the Ebola outbreak in West Africa, and I had the opportunity to lead a grant for an incredible humanitarian organization called International Medical Corps, and they hired me as a program manager. I was in my 20s. I was young and excited to get out there and learn and be a part of the international humanitarian response system. And the grant they had hired me to manage was focused on building, basically it was post in the year after Ebola, where we were trying to build the lab specimen, the blood transfer and laboratory specimen referral system. So the countries had basically their laboratory system had collapsed because so many people had died from Ebola, and the medical system was just completely gutted. And I was part of the response team that had the plan was to support 5 really rural health clinics with gas generators, a fridge, and then train those laboratory technicians to safely draw blood from patients in that very rural area of Guinea, West Africa, and then put those blood samples, store them in the fridge, keep the generator running to keep the fridge charged, then put the blood samples on a motorcycle with a person in a backpack to send them to a bigger lab in Conakry, or there was the U.S. Military lab still operating, and test them for Ebola and meningitis and a bunch, and 3 other really scary diseases. And I had come into this grant, and I was thinking, wow, this is really going to be really hard. It's very exciting, but if I could avoid having to worry about the gas in the generator, if I could take that off the plate of the problem, right? We have so many problems happening right now, right? We have to train the lab techs, we have to figure out how to track the samples, we have to figure out the motorcycle transport, we have to make sure the tests are ready, we have to text the results back to the lab so that the patient can see them. So much, we have to train people all to do this, and we have so little time. It was like a year grant, and I remember thinking, if I cannot worry about the power, this it will make everyone's job easier. So I asked our logistics team, hey, I've heard of these solar refrigerator things. Are they out there? And they came back the next day with three quotes. We asked the donor, it was CDC Foundation. We asked CDC, can we move some money around to pay, because it's more expensive to pay for the solar refrigerator than the gas generator, and gas. It's a little more expensive upfront, but we think it's going to be cheaper in the long run and it'll be easier. And they were like, yeah, of course, do that. You guys know, you're there, you know what's going on, do that. And that we installed them within a month. And for me, that was like that was my light bulb moment of like, this is a technology that people are using and is available. The challenge is how to integrate it into the broader humanitarian response system, how to finance it at scale because it's more expensive up front, and then how to train people to know that how to operate this new tech in complex scenarios. And so I came back from that program to the US. I was working as a paramedic, and we started responding into US disasters. And I noticed that there was very little solar battery solution deployment happening right in my backyard in the United States during power outage disasters. And so that's kind of what started we started realizing that, oh, maybe a nonprofit response organization that was dedicated to to providing those solutions as a no-cost service for other responders would be, one, super beneficial, and two, could help change do a little systems change in the disaster moment so that we could move the needle towards more sustainable response programs in general as these climate crises are growing in, as you said, in frequency and intensity. So that's kind of what started it. We've taken as many startups go. We've taken a very long and windy road from there. And if it's helpful, I can share these slides, but I'm also, Aroop, if there's a good place to jump in with questions or comments, please just stop me because I'll talk everyone's ear off.
No, no worries at all. Well, I think if you can share some slides, I think that will help the audience understand a bit more about your project and the work that you're doing.
Sure. So I'll share this. Then I'll go to slideshow. Is that popping up here?
Yes, we can see it very clearly.
Great. Great. So yeah, I'll start with this photo because I love this one. This is a relief base camp that was set up after Hurricane Ida in southern Louisiana, way down the bayou, about 2.5 hours south of New Orleans, where I'm calling from. And this is a volunteer camp that was housing about 30 people in the tents. The bottom left tent, in the bottom left white tent, was a medical, first aid clinic. The middle tent was a kitchen, and then the top right tan tent and the top left white tent were sleeping quarters with fans because it's hot in Louisiana. So we set up a pretty large temporary microgrid on this tennis court to power that relief base, and they significantly offset their fuel use. Every couple, if it got cloudy for a bunch of days, they sometimes had to run a generator, but they went from running multiple generators 24/7 and having to worry about all that fossil fuel to running it only on a couple hours when it's cloudy. So Footprint Project's mission really is to help build back greener after disasters by mobilizing cleaner energy infrastructure to crises. when the lights are out for communities, we focus on providing rapid power infrastructure needs assessments, then mobilizing these solar microgrids, delivering them, setting them up, and making sure they work. In this photo, this is after the Kentucky tornado in 2021, and this is in the bottom floor of a church. And we're setting this technician is setting up a portable solar generator to just keep the lights on. Um, and then the equipment, this kind of varied fleet of solar and batteries and appliances, climate tech, it stays as long as the sites need it for low or very low cost. I kind of think about it like a broad clean tech lending library that floats between disasters across the domestic United States. And then we responded to the Maui wildfires, and we have some equipment in Puerto Rico and now Jamaica, which I'll share some photos of in a second. And then, so when the grid is back on, or when the disaster is kind of settled, the dust is settled, or people are a little more stabilized, we focus on design, build, deploy training. So here we're training a local organization in New Orleans how solar generators and solar panels work. These panels on the bottom actually got installed on the shipping container right behind that yellow container, and that is then providing a backup power source for this community resilience hub. And then we donate loose climate tech, solar panels, solar generators, any kind of all the loose components that make up a microgrid when we have them available. And then we try to seed local workforce development opportunities by turning these systems into a kind of our hope, and this is a work in progress, is that we can build a workforce and jobs to move these microgrids around, similar to move the jobs that are out there to move generators or fossil fuel infrastructure around during power outages. We're still pretty small, but we're 14, 15 people, five in Asheville, North Carolina after Hurricane Helene, and the rest of us are in New Orleans. But we've done a number of disaster responses, powered up a number of relief hubs, over 200 when the grid is down. We have a growing fleet of mobile solar microgrids of various sizes active across the U.S. And then we've trained over 500 responders. So our track record is always a work in progress, but we're growing our impact year over year. And then I just wanted to share, because this fall's major hurricane, at least for in the U.S. region, Caribbean region, where we're mostly, we're covering right now the U.S. and the Caribbean, and we went to Maui, but that's kind of farther. We're still dipping our toe into the international or regional, moving this stuff farther across the world. But the photo on the left is a medical team loading portable batteries to power Starlinks less than a week after Hurricane Melissa hit Jamaica. And then the photo on the right is a Jamaican renewable energy solar installer installing a temporary solar microgrid at a community health clinic, the Grange Hill Medical Center, for in West Jamaica, where the power is still expected to be off for months. And so I like these two photos because it shows kind of the small solar battery kind of portable tech that can start, that helps search and rescue and power Starlinks and get the basic communications back up and running. These units, we sent over 200 of them, and they scattered them across the hospitals and fire stations and schools and kind of the infrastructure that was left standing after Melissa to power up the Starlink, so they could say, hey, I'm here. We have people that need help. Send a helicopter. We need to get search and rescue out here. And the photo on the right is kind of the long-term recovery, or for the larger infrastructure that needs power for weeks or months after the storm. It takes more time for us. It's harder to logistically move into the disaster affected area, and it requires us to contract local solar installers to set it up and maintain it. But what that does is allow us to push resources into the community, pay local installers to do the response, and then these units can provide real lasting benefit in the long arc of the months to years of recovery. So these panels might go on the roof of the health clinic once the health clinic's roof is repaired. But right now, what they need is power, because their generator broke and they're treating patients with a solar lamp, and they need to run their IT systems and their CPAPs and medical devices. So the unit on the right is much more um, it's infrastructure scale, while the stuff on the left is more temporary or portable, kind of you can move it around easier. And then I just wanted to share kind of something, a unique project we're working on in North Carolina since Hurricane Helene, which hit Western North Carolina about a little over a year. And what we're trying to figure out is how mobile microgrids, portable units up to towable or those pallet level batteries can provide varied infrastructure support. So mobile battery units that power water filtration or cooling centers, but really connect the mobile microgrids to climate efficient appliances or clean tech, the next most efficient air conditioner or the most efficient atmospheric water generation and filtration system. Or we know that the curve of climate tech innovation is only really getting started. So we're trying to do is stay ahead of the new the better tool in the toolkit per se to provide power, water, and shelter space or space for humans to gather and survive these events, and then how they can connect between responses to more permanent sites and provide the broader grid a benefit when they're sitting there. So instead of, traditional disaster response involves putting a bunch of stuff in a warehouse in a spot, waiting till that disaster happens, and then shipping it out, right? And getting it out to those affected communities. And since these assets are regularly generating power as long as the sun's out and the unit's on, we think that similar to like vehicle to grid tech or other innovations in the microgrid space, these units could provide benefit to various stakeholders when we physically move them, or when they're staged at a central location at a hive, they could just send their electrons to the grid we may not have to move them, we can just plug them back into the grid and they can provide that grid support. So again, when we think about the tech that we're deploying during disasters and then staging between disasters, we're looking at little ones and then medium ones and then large ones and then extra large ones in the portable to containerized stack, and then pairing that with water generation and filtration, with cold storage for medications and food, and then with those little, the little batteries that people need to just charge their phones, so we can provide a holistic kind of set of solar, battery, and climate infrastructure tech that can serve to truly try to decarbonize the disaster response infrastructure need, right? Everything from power tools to sawmills to fleet, mobile medical base camps like you saw in the beginning of the slides. So just as an example, this trailer in the background has responded to multiple disasters across the US. It's now based in New Orleans, but last year it responded to Pensacola, which is a small mountain town up in Western North Carolina after Hurricane Helene. And similar to the picture in Jamaica, there's a big panel array powering. This is a community resilience hub that was temporarily set up because most of the infrastructure out there got washed away during the storm. And this is the National Guard setting up the solar array. That unit stayed there for a couple months. And then once the grid returned to that site, we took this down and moved it back to the hub that we're now using. We're basing all of our operation out there in Mars Hill. So I think about this as like a unique example of a solar bee that can support a site when the grid's out and then float or buzz around to other disasters and pollinate new resilience hub microgrid projects after climate disasters. So I will stop there. And Aroop, again, thank you for taking the time to talk about these very hard problems because there's tech. It's a complex web of tech and people and finance and money, and then the logistics of getting these high-tech units to the folks that really can use them, and it's a very much a team effort.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I think, as I mentioned when you started the presentation, when you look at it, the way you presented, it gives a perspective of what it takes to actually get involved in disaster recovery. And as we all know, power plays a very, very important role. But one of the questions I had for you was, why is it important to see renewable energy as a critical part of modern disaster recovery? Why do you need renewable energy?
Yeah, and I mean, the reality is that you can, I mean, 90 still, and we, again, this is a great question that we've been hoping to answer with research, but we estimate just from direct experience that when we respond to disasters, we are still seeing that 90 plus, way over 90% of the power generation, electrons that are being used to charge run hospitals or base camps or the trucks that are responding to put up the power lines or all the people and stuff that comes into a disaster affected area, we estimate that still over 90% of that is fossil fuel based, meaning gas generators and gas moved by fossil fuel transportation, meaning trucks and boats and planes, and then we're also bringing in bottled water that's plastic bottled water wrapped in plastic, and then for shelter we bring in plastic tarps to give out or let people use for temporary shelter. So we estimate that still way over 90% of the total humanitarian logistics supply chain is fossil fuel based. And the reality is that when we started doing this, we were looking at, hey, what are alternative options, right? That can be that responders will be able to use that will make their job easier. Because if their job, if the solution is not an actual solution to a real problem, it's not going to be adopted, right? We could say, yeah, we should transition humanitarian response off of carbon intensive infrastructure, but if the alternatives don't allow responders to do their job in a response, they're not going to use them. So I say that because what solar and battery solutions do that other renewable options out there, meaning wind turbines or hydrogen, I think people out, some of the audience might see a lot of there's a growing number of renewable tech that is coming out down the pipe, and we're very excited about it. But the reality right now is that if we're looking for what is a better alternative to a gas generator that we can buy on Amazon and it'll work, or we can take it off the shelf and use it as a layperson, the portable or mobile solar battery solution is still kind of one of the only alternatives that we have. And what it does is that battery allows one, if you have a small enough load, like a Starlink that runs at 40 watts, or a CPAP that also runs at about 40 to 60 watts, you can buy a solar now, and this is like only in the last 5 years, right? You can buy a battery pack and a solar panel that can charge that thing, keep it powered all night, and charge up in the day while it's powering that thing. So you have this option now that even less than 10 years ago, you couldn't there was not batteries cheap enough or cost effective enough or turnkey enough to do that as someone, and they weren't in the stores, they weren't on Amazon, right? So what those new tools do is reduce the logistics burden of keeping a gas generator or a diesel generator running 24/7. Because when you're running a gas generator in a remote environment after a storm, the concerns are fossil fuel supply. If that thing doesn't get gas or diesel, it doesn't work at all, right? There's no that gas or diesel is not coming, you got to go to the gas line or pay a company to deliver that on a regular basis. And if you're running that generator 24/7, your energy loads are often a a going up and down, right? You put a bunch of people charge their phones, then they don't charge their phones. You run a you turn on your oven and then you don't turn on your oven, right? You run on your laptop, or you open your fridge and you leave your fridge open because your kids left your fridge open, and then your energy load goes up. So what batteries do and solar panels do is allow that varied energy load. It takes the weight of that load, and then you can use your generator only when the sun is not shining enough to keep your battery charged. And the studies from live this is a lot of this information has come from live events, like these big festivals that are transitioning it's live events and construction, remote construction, big, where they have big generators that they've moved in to a really remote area, and they have to run it 24/7 because of usually the IT stuff. They need the Wi-Fi to stay on always. They need the lights at night to stay on always. And what they're learning is by pairing a big battery with those big generators, they can offset their fuel supply by in the festivals that we've worked at, 90%. So they're going from, just by using a battery, they're going from running a generator 24 hours a day to running a generator 1 hour a day just to charge that battery. And I think about it again, just as one other example, like, how your car manufacturer tells you your car will last longer if it's on the freeway. You want to be running that car 60 miles an hour, or I don't know what kilometers if for other folks tracking, but you want to be running your car, fast consistently, right? You don't want to be stopping and starting. It puts more wear and tear on the engine. Same thing with a generator. So when you're running a generator just to charge your phone or your laptop, what you're essentially doing is like putting the pedal on a big truck just to power a USB plug, right? What that engine should be doing is running at peak to charge a battery that then can run all the other appliances. So it just optimizes the energy system, and that saves an incredible amount of fuel, plus the logistics supply chain required to move that fuel into a disaster site when there are limited resources, limited time, and and people to actually manage a fuel supply chain.
So I understand totally. So one thing I want to check with you is when you're building these mobile, rapidly deploying and energy systems, what are some of the design choices that you have, and what really makes a practical implementation in such crisis solution? Can you walk us through maybe one such work that you've done in the work that you've
Yeah,
done?
and Aroop, your audio is a little hard to hear if you can speak up. I think it said, what are the choices that I have? Yeah. So it's a unique space right now because there are so many solutions on the market. If you Google solar generator or solar microgrid now, compared to 5, 10 years ago, there's just it's like there's hundreds, right? I call it like technology overwhelm. Like there's so many options. They all have a price tag. They all have all these very, very, specs on how many kilowatts it can generate and how many kilowatt hours of battery storage it has. So when we're looking at, and we're technology agnostic, right? We are not a distributor supplier. We do have corporate sponsors that give us their tech, and then we test it, vet it, and deploy it to regional outages. But the reality is that for us, when we're looking at solutions, we are thinking about a couple things. One, is this user friendly, right? Can a nurse in a clinic turn this thing on and plug in, right? And understand that when, plug in the panel, turn on the switch, and get back to doing their job, right? And there is a unique line, there's like a break point between the all what we call them all-in-one portable solar kits. That's like if you think about those Lucy, the little solar Lucy lights, those little lanterns that are like puck lights. It's there's on a scale of small to really, really big, there's those. And then the units that we focus on are one order of magnitude bigger than those. So it looks like a, checked luggage or a suitcase sized battery with a couple solar panels. And we think about how user friendly it is, what the cost is for per kilowatt hour of energy storage, because the biggest cost for this type of equipment is the battery itself. It's the solar panels are also we're moving away from shipping solar panels as part of the R responses, because we've learned even in Jamaica recently that it's pretty much you can almost find solar panels almost anywhere in the world now. We don't the need for the actual panel, we usually can just go buy that, right, at from a local solar distributor or an installer in the biggest hub, right? City, market, so, wherever the disaster has hit. So we're usually thinking about how user friendly is the tech, and then what is the cost per kilowatt hour of battery storage, and then we add a couple features like we're thinking about how we can remotely monitor the fleet. So will does the warranty of the unit allow us to connect it to our remote monitoring systems? So as we're getting deeper into how to manage a fleet of various sized, various type solar microgrid systems. But in general, we try to focus on using off-the-shelf renewable infrastructure that we can stage, pack, and rapidly transport. And then once we get to the bigger sized units, we think about how which large batteries, when we're looking at container or palletized size systems that are going to require, a nurse's or the doctor at the clinic or the community aid worker is not going to set up they're not an electrician, right? They're not going to wire the battery into the breaker panel of their facility. They shouldn't, right? It's not safe. That should be done by a licensed electrician in the region or the state or the county or the parish that they operate, right? That the unit that the site is. So once we're into the bigger scale of units, we really think about what suppliers of hardware are available in the region, and then who in the installer network knows, is trained or certified on that technology. And I'll give you a good example, like Tesla, right? We partner with them to move their mobile Powerwall units into various storms across the region, and we're often relying on their installer network to help get the unit up and running. We can install it to an extent, but once once we're talking about connecting the big battery to a breaker panel, we're not, for example, in Jamaica, we're contracting local solar installers to do that work so that we don't, so they do it because they know and they're certified and licensed in their country. So I think about the user friendliness and the cost on the small end, and then on the big end, what installer networks are available.
Thank you. Thanks for these incredible
Aroop, sorry, the sound is coming really low. Not much. Do you want me to launch the poll question?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, we can
Wonderful.
adapt.
Let me
It's in
launch
the
the
job
poll question.
description.
100%. So, for our audience, if today's conversation inspires you, we invite you to explore ways to engage further with the Frost and Sullivan Institute on our global initiatives around education, sustainability, and innovation. This is a multiple choice answer, so feel free to choose more than one answer. Options include get involved with the Frost and Sullivan Institute and our global initiatives focused on education and innovation. You can connect with the Footprint Project to learn more about their impactful models and explore ways to support their work. You are welcome to schedule a dialogue with the Frost and Sullivan Institute to explore potential areas for collaboration, and you can stay informed by receiving updates, insights, and opportunities to engage in upcoming growth webinars and impact sessions. We'll keep this poll open for 10 minutes, and once the webinar concludes, the Frost and Sullivan team will follow up regarding your responses. Thank you.
Thank you, Leta. Let me ask the next question, and this is also for our entire audience, Will. For those that are listening today, whether they are from organizations, corporates, nonprofits, uh, what is the one meaningful action they can take to support greener, more resilient disaster recovery systems?
Such a great question. Um, One, I think it depends on what piece of that puzzle the the audience is coming from, where they're coming from, right? If they're a nonprofit response organization, I think talking, really sitting down and thinking through their fossil fuel supply chain and exploring alternatives is a really good start. And if they're a company thinking about how their bottom line can be uh, leveraged in many ways to support the climate disaster response architecture, right? So that we know that companies need to make, money. We all need to put food on our table, but as these climate disasters increase, I think there are going to be unique, and I'm sure y'all are looking at this as part of the Frost and Sullivan Institute, how business models are going to have to change to adapt to these recurring, frequently reoccurring and then intensifying extreme weather events. And I think incorporating renewable tech and partners that are doing it into your either marketing or corporate social responsibility plan or your just staff safety and engagement plan. We've talked to companies about, hey, we can't when that hurricane hit up in Asheville, we weren't able to connect with our staff because all of their communications were down. And that cost us, I mean, that's cost them the companies lots of business. And it's also like, how do we make sure our staff is okay in these regions? So I think there's a lot of space to think or pieces to think through from a corporate actor's perspective. And then just from a like citizen, when this is my favorite one, and this is the one I really think is like the number one, if we're trying to collectively move the needle towards climate positive disaster response solutions and work and programming. I really, and I tell people, go find your local fire station. Like you live somewhere, go find the local team that you are going to call, or if you need help, you are going to go to them for help and ask them, what is their backup power plan? Like, our fire station is, a couple block, maybe 12 blocks that way. And like, what is the plan for them if the grid goes out for more than a couple weeks? Because it happens, and oftentimes the plan is we hope we have a gas supply chain and we expect that will be delivered. And we are doing this regionally here in New Orleans, and we're doing it, our staff in Asheville are doing this. And it's really, I think the systems change comes from local communities engaging with their own resilience, the tools and the people that are going to be there when the disaster happens, and really digging into how are they going to continue their operations if and when the fuel supply doesn't land. Because sometimes every disaster we see it, it's like the world these days, right? You have a plan, nothing ever goes to plan. So the way to solve that is to prepare and really communicate and over communicate within your neighbors. It's neighbors and local responders that are going to keep communities lights on. And so we really need to ask those hard questions.
Thank you very, very much, Will. I know there's so much to cover, and time is always a challenge when you have open conversations like this. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to talk to you sometime in the near future as well. And I'm hoping that people can reach out to you as well to find out more in different ways in which they can work with you. But Will, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time today. I wish you the very, very best.